Okay, so I'm Sandra. I am co-chair of Locac, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening as Trish is unavailable. And James is going to help me co-host, so he'll be keeping track of people to speak and help unmute. So just be patient when you raise your hands until we find your name and unmute you. And a reminder, if you do want to speak, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little reactions button, a happy face. If you click on that, there should be a raise hand option. And then when you click on that, a raised hand will show up on your screen and we'll know you want to speak. And if you're calling in, I think it's *9 is what you push to speak. And I just want to make sure if anybody can't find that, wave frantically, we can help you. Okay, so how about we start with the roll call? Sandra, I'm here. Sue?
Okay, yes. You want me to call it roll?
Yeah, you do roll call. Thanks.
Okay, Trish is not here. Sue is here. Sandra?
Here.
Deborah is not here. Lynette?
Here.
Yael?
Here.
James?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Tim? Okay, how about Jim? And then Jan?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hold on. People are coming in.
Oh, there's
Oh,
Tim.
there's Tim. He just is coming in. All right, James, you can keep admitting people, unmuting them.
Okay.
All right, so announcements from us. We're still working on scheduling Daniel Del Rio from Code Enforcement to come and speak to us. I know a lot of people are interested and we're just trying to secure that. So hopefully next month or the following month. Also that we did disband the Unhoused Residents Committee on August 8th, which was posted in our newsletter and on the website. And we're not going to be discussing Morrow Shores this evening. The applicants let us know it's being put on hold and pending the offset numbers. They're the three main announcements to be aware of as you came to the meeting tonight. And then meeting protocols, I just want to read and remind everyone that Locac, we represent the people of Los Osos and we hold high standards of positive civic engagement. We want respectful, courteous, and thoughtful discussion of ideas and opinions. We welcome all opinions and issues being discussed. If any public member or council does not adhere to the standards of civic engagement, as described in our policies and procedures manual, will be given a warning. And if a second warning is needed, the participant will be asked to leave the meeting or will be muted for the duration of the meeting. So we just thank everyone for being here, for being engaged, for wanting to support our community and to do it respectfully, understanding we all have multiple perspectives and ideas in the space. And that's what makes for, I think, better communities. So with that, we will start with our county and local agency reports. And we're not sure if there is somebody here from the sheriff's office, if they could raise their hand. No? Do you see anyone?
I don't see anybody with their hand up.
Okay. And how I think the Highway Patrol report, Officer Klingenberg.
And I just asked you to unmute Officer Klingenberg.
I think I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think that I missed last month's meeting. We had a fairly significant collision occur down in the Napomo area that I had to respond to. And so I apologize for missing last month's meeting. For the month of August, we had a total of 10 collisions in and around the Los Osos area. I'll go through them really quickly and just give you a quick summary of each one. Beginning on the 6th, we had a solo vehicle collision on 11th Street north of San Luis Avenue. where a vehicle struck a mailbox. No injuries involved there. Solo vehicle, no passengers, driver only. On the also on the 6th, on Los Osos Valley Road, east of Clark Valley Road, we had a hit and run where a vehicle struck a bicyclist. The bicyclist suffered complaint of pain, injuries. That occurred, like I said, on Los Osos at Clark Valley, just east of Clark Valley. It was a hit and run, and there was no description available of the vehicle, no license plate, no description of the vehicle that any witnesses or the victim was able to provide there. On the 9th, we had a DUI collision occur on Bay Oaks Drive, South Bay Boulevard. That was a solo vehicle collision, like I said, with the DUI driver, where the driver struck, or the vehicle struck, some landscaping rock there on Bay Oak at South Bay. On the 11th, on Los Olivos, east of Fairchild Way, we had a 2-vehicle non-injury collision where one of the vehicles struck a parked motor vehicle. Again, no injuries there. On the 14th, Los Osos Valley Road and Pine Avenue, 2-vehicle collision. One person was injured in that they reported a complaint of pain type of injury. 2 vehicles, again, that was where a vehicle ran a stop sign at Los Osos Valley Road and Pine Avenue. We had another hit and run. This was on Los Osos Valley Road west of 9th Street. It was a solo vehicle that struck a fence. There was a vehicle description. However, we do not have a license plate description. The vehicle description was a silver Honda CRV. On the 16th, on Petro Valley Road, 3/10 of a mile west of Nokomis Court, we had a solo vehicle collision strike some bushes, suffered some significant damage, it looks like, for striking some bushes, but nonetheless, there were no injuries there in that collision. Petro Valley Road, west of Nokomis Court. On the 16th, at Palisades and Woodland Drive, we had a 2-vehicle non-injury collision. Looks like an unsafe turning movement was involved in that. Again, 2 vehicles, minor damage, but yeah, nonetheless, two vehicle collision, Palisades at Woodland Drive. On Los Osos Valley Road on the 18th, 260 feet west of Valle Vista Place, we had a 3-vehicle collision, unsafe speed, rear ender type collision. No injuries involved in there, in that collision, like I said, but 3 vehicles, where 1 vehicle struck the vehicle in front of it, which pushed it into the 3rd vehicle, is what that looks like there. Los Osos Valley Road, west of Valle Vista Place. The final one was a private property collision at an address in the 1200 block of Los Osos Valley Road. It was a hit and run, unknown vehicle, unknown plate, where a vehicle struck a parked vehicle that was parked on private property, and then fled the scene. But those are the 10 collisions for the month of August for the Los Osos Valley, or for the Los Osos area in and around Los Osos. And I sure appreciate you listening to me. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them.
Do any council members have any questions? I have a question. Would you say, it sounded like those were all in different locations, so
Yep.
it doesn't seem like there's any reoccurring areas. And does it seem like most of them are related to speed?
Actually, of these, we only had one that was actually related to an unsafe speed factor. The rest of them were, one was an intersection collision where they ran a stop sign. One was, well, 2 or 3 of them were unsafe turning movements where, like, if a vehicle sort of just drifts over and then will strike a parked vehicle, we classify that as an unsafe turning movement. And if that's a hit and run, we might not know if speed is involved in there because, you know, we don't really have any statements. We just know that sort of in general what happened, but not specifically. So again, I don't think that speed was a huge factor in August's collision. I'll say that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Does the public have any questions?
We've got
Looks
one
like-
from Dave and Bev. Dave and Bev, I've asked you to unmute.
I'm just wondering, this is Dave, can you hear me?
Sure
Yeah.
can. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave Bolus. I'm just wondering if the vehicles drifting off to the side and hitting something could be classified as distracted driving, or if you guys just call them unsafe turns.
We certainly would investigate that part of it. The primary collision factor would be an unsafe turning movement, but we have several boxes that we have to check on the collision report based on what we determined by getting all of the statements from the involved parties and the witnesses. And if they indicate that distracted driving was a factor in that collision, we would check those boxes. And then we would possibly associate that to the collision. But distracted driving, if I can explain this in a good way, it wouldn't be the primary collision factor. We wouldn't classify it as that's the factor that we would find that they violated, even though it's an associated factor. We would, if someone's looking down and they're on their phone and they rear end the vehicle in front of them, we would say that that's an unsafe speed for conditions collision, because the safe speed to be traveling when you're on your phone is 0 miles an hour. And so anything over that, we would classify as unsafe speed, but we would associate distracted driving and make that part of the investigation itself. It would be notated in the report that distracted driving was a factor. And in any of these, I did not note that in any of these collisions that we had that were that type of collision.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other public questions? No. Okay, thank you so much for coming and giving us the update.
No problem. Thank you again. Thanks for your service. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, next up, Carrie Brown is not with us this evening. So we will go to Supervisor Gibson.
And I have managed to unmute myself, a feat of some technological expertise that I didn't know I had. A pleasure, as always, to be with you this evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you might imagine, since I was last with you, a lot of time in our office has been spent on the issues of our unhoused residents, particularly those along Palisades Avenue, but in a wider sense also in other parts of our communities in the county. And as part of the overall effort, we do have an item coming on our Board of Supervisors agenda next Tuesday, the 28th, which will be the consideration of an ordinance to prohibit overnight camping in vehicles in the community of Los Osos. And it is basically within the urban area of Los Osos. The process of that is that the ordinance was introduced at our last meeting, which was September 14th. In a city, they would call that, I suppose, the first reading, but it's a formality that needs to be attended. We take action on the ordinance on the 28th, on Tuesday. We then have to issue formal notice in a newspaper of record, and the ordinance becomes effective 30 days after we act on it. So that's just a little bit of the process that, that goes forward there. That said, I think most of you know that we have been working to enforce the no parking for longer than 72-hour ordinance that's already on the books, and to do enforcement on vehicles which have expired registrations. But those efforts, to my knowledge, I didn't check immediately today, but to my knowledge, those efforts have been expanded because the safe parking program on Kansas Avenue is essentially full. It has acquired a lot of participants, and there was just no more room. So in order to comply with the court case, I think we've heard and mentioned a number of times, Martin versus Boise. Since we don't at this point have then reasonable alternatives for folks to relocate to, we can't and we won't enforce anything that would cause people to have to be relocated. Now that said, on the other side of the effort, and I think of this as a balanced effort to continue to expand our services, in particular safe parking sites and access to services that are going to lead unhoused residents to, hopefully get them on a path to permanent housing. I can tell you tonight that the District 2 Legislative Assistant, Mr. Blake Fixler, has temporarily stepped into a role as project manager for the Kansas Avenue site. I'll emphasize a couple things there. One, this is temporary. The administrative staff, and he works, by the way, he works under and for, in this role, he is working for the county administrative officer, Wade Horton, and the assistant CAO. And the administrative office is working on recruiting a program manager for homeless initiatives, but it's going to be some weeks before that person is recruited, hired, and up to speed. So in the meantime, Blake's going to be spending part of his time working to ensure the management of the site has that safe parking program working well, making sure that there's continuity in the day-to-day operations, that the different agencies and departments of the county that need to coordinate to make that program work are being coordinated, and that he will be part of an effort to communicate the activities that are going on at Kansas Avenue. But I want to emphasize that the most important part of his role there is to ensure that this program works for the participants. So with that, Blake tells me that work to expand the number of spaces at the site is going to start next week. That effort is a little more complicated than it might look on the surface, because in order to properly grade the site, it is also going to be installed an all-weather surface, so that in the rainy season we have a drivable and walkable surface there. We're going to have to figure out where to have folks temporarily station themselves while the work site gets on there. So there's a bit of a logistical puzzle that has to be worked out with that. But we're hopeful that in the end, that site can be perhaps almost doubled in its size, and we can continue then to provide the resource and a reasonable alternative. Another thing that Blake's going to be working on is to help us scout and get a list of potential sites to add safe parking sites elsewhere within the 2nd District. And at a point, I'm going to reach out, we are going to reach out, and the admin office is going to reach out and really sort of challenge each of the supervisors in each of the supervisorial districts to come up with potential sites where we can establish this. Because for this to work, we've really got to take this on a community-wide effort. Along those lines, a slightly different kind of program, but the county just announced day before yesterday that working with the 5 Cities Homeless Coalition and the city of Grover Beach, there's going to be a site set up to set up pallet structures. These are sort of prefabricated units of about 100 square feet that can hold 1 or 2 people. We've found a piece of county owned land in Grover Beach that's very close to social services and behavioral health services. And so we're working through the details. That's another, in fact, a really important piece of that is also on our agenda of the 28th, where the board, acting under the emergency shelter declaration that we issued way back in 2018, is going to make some temporary changes to the building code so that we can allow those structures to be set up. I'm very hopeful that this site really well managed. It's got a great approach to management. I think that that's going to be a great proof of concept, and I'm hopeful that those kinds of facilities can be set up again in other parts of the county. So, you know, as I've said in talking to the press recently, you know, the county has been a little slow to really get going on this, but we're starting to roll now. And my goal is that we make relentless incremental progress. And I think we're starting to see the fruits of the labors of a lot of people. It's going to take a significant, investment and commitment of resources, but I'm hopeful. In we're going to be bringing along service providers again, trying to understand the needs of each and every unhoused resident as an individual, and getting them help to get on a path for permanent housing. So that's the report there. Lots of other things going on. You may be reading about various activities on balancing our water supply, on working to meet to appoint a clerk recorder to fill out the term of our former clerk recorder, Tommy Gong, and a number of other interesting things. But I'll stop at this point and be available for your questions.
Are there any members or questions from the council?
I think Yael was
Yael.
first.
Okay.
So I'm very, very, very happy to hear about the pellet shelters finally being approved. That's beautiful. So what about the progress of the tiny house village of the People Self-Help in Los Osos? Since this is such an amazing project and will actually provide real housing, I'd like to know what the progress there. I think that regarding the safe parking sites, I see the county still putting the cart ahead in front of the horse. We can't move people off of streets, of public streets, before providing them an alternative, which has to be appropriate alternative, not just the Kansas site. It's not, in my opinion, it's never been appropriate, but it's working for some people, so it's great, and I'm happy for them. It's just not working for the people of Los Osos. It's not working for the people of Oceano, obviously, because they're not there. But you cannot move, per Martin v. Boise, you cannot move people off the street until you have enough spaces for everybody. So what are you doing about that, and how you're going to prevent the cops, the law enforcement, from actually pushing people off the street once you're putting the ordinance there? Are you going to prevent that? Are you going to make sure that they are not harassed unless they're having an alternative?
Well, yeah, so we are not in the business of harassing unhoused residents. We want to move them to a safe, secure site where they can be connected with services. I asked our legal counsel about the interpretation of Boise, and the word that I got back is that no, it is not necessary to have a particular site available for every unhoused resident that exists in the county. As long as we have some reasonable alternative, we can legally, under Martin v. Boise, pursue enforcement. And the key is, right now, we don't, because of the reaching capacity at Kansas. And as to the People Self-Help project in Los Osos, that's going to be a very, very long road because of the sensitive habitat issues that exist, as you well know, all throughout the community. I've been talking to People Self-Help. They're awaiting a biological report on the site where they could conceive of doing that. And until they get that, they're really not able to even move forward. Once we get that, we then have to deal with all the other issues of development, including making sure we meet the building codes and water supply and waste, taking care of the wastewater and all those things. I've told people self-help. I'm more than happy to help them move that as fast as they possibly can. But in reality, it's not. It will take months for that to get going, and we'll hope to see it happen.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to reiterate that the interpretation of the council may not be correct. I mean, if you check other cases that are going on right now in California, you may see that this is not correct. But it's up to the lawyers, but I'm just pointing it out.
Okay. And James, did you have a question?
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. And my comment is, I wanted to say thanks to Supervisor Gibson for all of the work that he has done and Blake is doing to help develop the Kansas Ave site, to help improve that site, and to find, solutions that are relevant and important to both the housed and unhoused residents in Los Osos. I think this is really a win for everybody and should be celebrated as such. And I think everybody acknowledges we're not there yet, but we're making really good progress. So thanks, Supervisor Gibson, for all your work on this.
Sure. Thank you, James.
And are there any other council members have a question? Hold on, I'll get to the public in a minute. I just want to make sure, council. I had one question. Again, thanks for all this progress. And I'm wondering so there's safe parking, which I understand to be the 24/7 safe parking. Is there any, and then the longer term transitional is the pallet housing or possibly the tiny houses? And then what about, is there work around sanctioned encampments for folks that don't have vehicles? Are they going to be allowed to be at the safe parking sites, or what's happening with that demographic?
Sure. Well, the pallet house, I think the pallet house project, pallet structure project, I think is envisioned to shelter those who probably would otherwise be living in tents. There a lot of the cities in particular aren't keen on establishing camping, sanctioned camping sites. They would prefer to develop a site and to install the pallet structures, and that's their decision, and it comes from an analysis of pros and cons that I haven't dug too deeply in. At the same time, as we expand Kansas, we're keeping in mind the possibility of allowing tents to be established out there. But that's balancing against how many vehicles. And, as I know many of you have been by Kansas, there are quite a number of recreational vehicles that are parked there, and yet many more on the streets in various communities. So it's not clear whether we have the space to accommodate that, but it's on our minds for sure. And again, I think the general feeling is that it would be better and safer, more comfortable, more stable to have folks move into pallet structures if they're tent camping at this point.
Thank you. And I see Sue has her hand raised.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to thank you also, Bruce, for all the work that you guys are doing and the supervisors in trying to get this moving. I think it's a long time coming. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll go to the public. Ben, you've had your hand raised.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? This is my first time using Zoom.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, beautiful. So my question, first and foremost, Mr. Gibson, sweet background. That's cool. So I'm one of the people that live on Palisade Street, and I just wanted to know how, if we are on Kansas Street, how are people, especially people, Mr. Gibson, you were talking about the possibility of tents, how are they going to be able to get to town to do laundry? Or more importantly, and for me personally, specifically, my bicycle is my primary form of transportation. And if I end up, getting off work at 10:30, I'm there way after the buses run. I've already been hit once in this county. What do you expect me to do? Yeah, I mean, you're going to make me quit my job. And my other point is that there is a worker shortage in this county right now, a very desperate worker shortage. The place that I worked full-time as a server in Memorial Day. We're so short-staffed that we've had to cut hours and remove tables because we're so understaffed. And by you trying to remove me and exile me outside, out of sight, out of mind on Kansas Avenue, not only are you shooting me in the foot, but you're shooting yourself in the foot as well. That's all I have to say.
Sure. No, you bring up a number of good points, Ben, and ones that we know we need to address. We've always said that Kansas Avenue is a first step. We were able to put it together quickly because it was county-owned land that we could get in and develop, and it is a work in progress. We understand that there's a lot of services that are needed, and that things like potable water, making sure the facilities there are adequately sized to the population, transportation, all those things are in need to be working, and we continue to work on that. It would be much better for us to be able to provide services and provide a safe place for unhoused residents to go that's close to where they work, that's close to the communities that they associate with. And that's my fond hope that we get there and we continue to work on that. So that's one of the reasons I indicated that the districts really need to start looking for those sites where we can establish those other services. And that's a challenge that we face. It's a challenge we owe the unhoused community to keep working on it. But at the same time, Kansas Avenue is full, so it's fulfilling the needs of some fraction of the population, and we're going to keep working to make it better.
And I see I see a bunch of hands up. If you guys can use the raise hand button at the bottom, that's going to help me out a lot. Otherwise, I can try and look for your hands. But I see
Okay.
Julie first, and then we'll go to.
And I think Alice had her hand raised, or physical. So if you could just write her name down, we'll call on you, Alice, when
And I
it's time.
see Leala and Lindy.
Okay, so who do we start with? Who had their?
We're going to start with Julie. Julie, you've been asked to unmute.
Good evening, Julie Tacker, and I'd like to speak to the People's Self-Help Housing debacle at Mountain View and Los Olivos. That project was, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. That project was served with a notice of violation from County Code Enforcement. Basically, what's happened is People's Self-Help Housing has shot themselves in the foot. They were told 22 days before they stripped the site of its vegetation that it was a wetland. Just 6 days before the site was denuded, they were told they needed a biological assessment. They proceeded. The repercussions of such a violation may require restoration of the site for a 5-year minimum, which would put that site farther down the list of any other site should the development green light ever come on after the LCP is amended and the community plan, et cetera. The vegetation that's there that was removed is actually growing back. That's an indication that there is water, high groundwater under the site that would sustain the wetland that was identified before the site was, as I said, denuded. I think if any other entity, private developer had stripped their property, the community would be up in arms. And I'm alarmed that there's some idea that somehow they should get a pass and be able to build a tiny village or whatever it is they want to build. They had no permits, they had no permission. And that puts them in line for punishment. And so I think not only is that project on the back burner, but it's dead. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next.
Let's do Alice. Alice, you've been asked to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gibson, I just want to underscore what Ben just said. There are a number of people that need help immediately, not in a year or 5 or whenever that might be, as opposed to being positively harmed right now. So I'm thinking of a number of people that I know who live on Palisades who they don't urinate or defecate on the streets or in the bushes. They don't threaten or assault anyone. They don't drop needles. They don't start fires. Many of them are working. They're the working poor. And they don't want to leave Los Osos. As much as they want to do what we all want to do, which is to take a shower, to have that basic decency, human dignity. But even that is not enough to induce them to want to go to Kansas Avenue. Now, if the ordinance is put into effect, which I assume it will be, how will being forced out of Los Osos be of benefit to them? That's the first question. And the second question is, I had communicated with you by email and noted that one person who lives in her small car and works in Los Osos, if she has to drive from Kansas Avenue into Los Osos to work, she will add about 7,000 miles per year to her driving. That's not only the wear and tear on the car, the expense of the gasoline, that's putting more carbon into our atmosphere during a time of climate catastrophe. And multiply that by how many other people who are going to need to go from Kansas Avenue or some other remote site to get to basic services. So those are my 2 questions. How does it benefit the non-troublemakers who are being forced out of town? And what about the climate?
Again, what we see the benefit of a safe parking program is as a secure place for folks who have to lodge, or some who choose to lodge in their vehicles, can establish those vehicles and be connected with basic sanitation and basic services. The effort to get folks connected on a path to get a permanent housing situation is one that we really are putting a lot of effort in. And because of recent state and federal funding, we have resources that we didn't used to have that we're trying to get that going. So, as to the needs of folks who commute, I certainly understand that. And I do understand that there are those who are living in their vehicles who are working and who don't cause trouble. So that's, again, the prime motivation of trying to seek those kinds of situations where those of our community members who are in that situation can be housed. Again, Kansas Avenue is not the end all of this. It is a stepping stone. It is a piece of a much larger effort that we're going to have to undertake. And the situation with the number of folks who are unhoused right now has been many, many years in developing. And the solutions, as much as we desperately want to provide safe, clean habitation for folks, are going to take some time to develop. So, the way I'd characterize it is we're working as best we can to provide the most resources that we can. And we're not ending with one safe parking site on Kansas Avenue.
Thanks. And who's next?
Tom, Tom Cross up.
Hello.
Hi.
Ben and Alice actually spoke most of the same concerns I have, as someone who lived in an RV during my freshman year of college and just couldn't get a full night's sleep because every night or other night, a sheriff would just knock on the door and say, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I'm glad that the Kansas Avenue site exists, and I'm glad that that's not the end of the projects for people like me and like people Ben and Alice know. And that's all I wanted to say. They asked the questions and Bruce answered pretty well the questions I had.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Leala. And I apologize if I pronounced your name incorrectly. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, first of all, it's Leela. That's my fiance right there. And my name is Sam. We both live in our cars in Palisades. We both work. She works at a hotel. I actually work at a gas station. I'm in management. We're not crackheads is basically what I'm trying to say. We represent the people that do have jobs and would like to contribute to society. But right now with rent being as high as it is and with like people not being able to get evicted, there's really nothing available. I just applied for a place just the other day that was on, it was on a listing online and it had already been grabbed by somebody else, you know? I just wanted to talk about the Kansas thing. That is just, it is just out of the question for us because like I usually get off work late at, and there's like a check-in is and also it's first come first serve. So showing up to a dirt field next to a jail that's miles outside of town is just not feasible, you know? Also that it just, to me, I know it's temporary, but Kansas is more of like a proto concentration camp than a step in the right direction. And that's just all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
All right, next is Lindy. Let me find your name, Lindy, so I can unmute you. Okay, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Bruce, I'm very, very, very impressed that the county has finally stepped up to do the encampment model that's basically going to be the answer for so many different situations that people are in. First, I just wanted to say, I am waiting for somebody to tell me when affordable available housing is going to come onto the scenario because it isn't. Every time we set up another project, it gets overrun by, there's too many people that want to live here. So I think I would request that the county begin looking at sanctioned encampments instead of safe parking, because safe parking is basically the model is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then back on the streets with your vehicle. What we're doing out at Kansas is a much more humane model where people can actually be for 24 hours and have their spot. So, and then I know it's supposed to be a pilot program, but 3 months should be actually 30 years. This is what it's going to take. There are always going to be people that are going to be in need of that kind of situation to be safe and protected. So I'm just sad to see this discussion about how in a few years we'll have enough housing, because I think we need to be realistic and know that this is probably the best that we're going to be able to offer for a certain amount of people that are in need. And then I again have that concern about people, if you have a vehicle, at Kansas, you have a vehicle and then you have some people have 2 cars. It's like, this is kind of a deluxe situation for people that have all that, you know, they have a home and they have 2 vehicles. Many people have a car that they live in. So I think you need to get some equity going. The parking should be outside where everybody has to walk into their space that they have. So that's one suggestion I would make. You'll get a lot more people having, I don't want to crowd people, but I just don't see the point of some people that have cars in the vehicle. The pallet house idea, I'd love to see some pallet houses come up into the expansion area at least, because there are a lot of people that are, I met a 6'2" man that has a job and he lives in his car. He has a little tiny car and he goes to a hotel on weekends so he can stretch out. So people like him should have a pallet house option available. And I would love to see the pallet houses are a very good temporary. They can be broken down and moved to other places. And so anyway, I would love to work. I'm very excited that Blake is going to be taking this over. I think he's very level-headed. And so I hope that he will come work with those of us in the community that have been doing this kind of work for years in our heads, because nothing else has had a chance to exist. So thank you again for Kansas.
Thanks, Lindy.
So let me just respond. In general, the provision of more shelter of all sorts is absolutely crucial. And we're behind in this state, we're behind in this county. That we need to up our game on that. That's absolutely true. One little detail about Kansas is that the pilot period has been extended to 6 months now. So again, seeing that it was successful, I think we're seeing proof of concept there. And right now the target is out at 6 months. A lot of stuff to do to figure out how to make this sustainable, and again, how to expand the reach of that sort of program to other places throughout the county.
All right, Patrick has his hand up. Patrick, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. I want to change the subject actually. So if there's other people that would still like to talk about the homeless issue, I can wait.
I see Ben has his hand up. Ben, do you have another comment you want to make? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just had one more question for Mr. Gibson, and I want to ask you this directly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, Mr. Gibson, I live on Palisades Street. I love living on Palisades Street because my neighbors are the coolest neighbors you could ever hope to have, most of whom are disabled or retired, got kicked out of housing or had their house burned down. We are a very eclectic community that is very beautiful. I would love to see you come down sometime. On Tuesdays at 5:30 at the Red Barn, we have a cookout and everyone's invited. The Red Barn is next to the community center on Palisades. We'd love to have you there. I will personally cook you a burger, but my direct question is this. How long until I get kicked off this street? Because I need to make long-term plans and I can't get a straight answer out of anybody.
Well, I mean, I can't quote you a specific date, Ben. It's an ongoing process of making sure that proper outreach is done and that a reasonable alternative exists. And so I can't specify that on a particular time. I think in the long term, though, it is pretty clear that having folks living in vehicles parked on a public road like Palisades is not going to be a sustainable model for how we would like housing in this county to work. So, referencing all the efforts that I've mentioned before in terms of increasing alternatives to that particular location, we're going to work toward a better system of housing. And because it's a system of housing, it's gonna take time. So again, exactly when enforcement comes to Palisades, I'm not sure. I'm not directly involved or responsible about that, but we're balancing the needs of a whole variety of residents and their interests. And I think that, working together as a community, we can figure out alternatives that will work better for everybody. So that's my vision. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Great. I see there's a bunch of other hands up, but this is not really intended to be a discussion of the comments. I think most people have had their 3 minutes. I don't know, what is the protocol here, Sandra?
Yeah, well, I think everybody gets to speak once, and then we should open it up, after everyone's spoken, if there's any final thoughts. So we should let Patrick speak.
Well,
if he wants to address Supervisor Gibson.
Okay.
And then we can move on.
Yael, do you have a comment on this topic?
Yes, I want to remind Bruce that we do have county land. I know you say it's very difficult to use it because it's deed restricted agriculture, but when you have an emergency need for encampment, and we do have that, and this area is right across from the sewer plant, it's within the area of Los Osos. People will be very happy and lucky to be there. And I'm telling you that they'll move right away. All you need to do is just set it out as an emergency encampment, sanction encampment, and people will be there, and they're off of Palisade. So we do have this area. And as far as I know, around Los Osos, this is probably the only county-owned land we have, unless you have some other suggestion. But I know that there should be a way to accommodate that. It's 40 acres. You can take a couple of them for sanction encampment, or remediate them by getting some other agricultural land so that they can be there. And they need to be moved off of Palisade, but they cannot be thrown to nowhere. So that's the right thing to do. Please do the right thing.
So let me just respond this way. Yeah, absolutely. That is county-owned land, and we're taking a very careful look at all the land the county controls as to where it might make sense. What we have to do is go down a long list of pros and cons, and we've discussed this many times, Yael. So I'm going to give you a short answer for the benefit of the public. Just to know, Yael and I have discussed this at great length, but the one of the serious cons of the particular parcel you note is the amount of time that would take to work out all the details of repurposing that land. So it's not, we are ranking, or we don't have a formal process, but as we look at different possibilities, we look at what the benefits and what the costs are, and we're trying to do the best we can.
And I think, and this is part of what Blake's going to be working on as well. So I think these discussions will continue as far as assessing identifying possible lands and making sure he's in contact with community members and council members.
Right. And working with other communities as well. I'm about to, engage the city of Morro Bay as to what possibilities they might have. So there's a lot to do here.
So we have 2 more hands. For Supervisor Gibson specifically, and then we'll move on to the rest of our agenda.
Yeah, let's go to Leanna next, because I think she's on the same topic. Go ahead, Leanna, you can unmute yourself.
Can you see how to unmute, Leanna? You should be able to unmute now. I don't think. Okay, let's move on. There she did. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have a very bad internet connection, so maybe you already hit on this. Do people out there have electricity, or do they have to generate their own electricity?
There's no power provided on the site right now.
No place they can plug in?
Not at this point. I imagine that that's a consideration, but I have not heard that there are any plans to establish electric connections at this point.
Okay. What about?
That was one of our recommendations, so hopefully that's being looked at.
Thank you.
I think she was still talking.
Yeah, she can talk.
Oh, I wanted to know, again, I may have missed it, potable water.
In process of being developed.
What does that mean?
Well, it means a potable water supply is not part of that facility right now, but we understand the need, and we're figuring out how to take care of that need. And exact timeline I don't have, but we do understand it's necessary, and we're working toward it.
I'm old enough to have friends, Japanese American friends, who were in Manzanar. And this kind of reminds me of what happened to them. They were all crowded together in one place. Nothing was set up for them. I don't want to see this become an internment camp. Thank you.
So let me be very plain. This is not an internment camp. Folks are there voluntarily. They are free to come and go.
Okay. And last, we'll have Patrick McGibney.
You can unmute yourself, Patrick.
Thank you. I have two questions for Supervisor Gibson. One has to do with the federal money that the county received, and I believe it was $55 million for unincorporated areas. I'd like to know how much of that was allocated to the Los Osos water basin and where the rest of it went. And then second question is, how is the county coming along with hiring a consultant for revamping Title 19? And has that happened? And if not, when do you see that happening?
So let me start with the second one first, Patrick. I am not sure. I assumed we would have the consultant on board at this point. Certain contracts below a certain amount don't need to come to the board. I haven't seen one come to the board, but we'll certainly track that down, and we can get an answer on that. As to the ARPA money, $15 million was designated by the board to go to infrastructure, which was particularly water, wastewater, and broadband. Those are the three specific bits of infrastructure that the ARPA legislation called out. In an action a couple of 3 meetings ago, the board went ahead and targeted that money to a bunch of specific projects. 2 million of that went to broadband enhancements. It's mostly projects that we can get done quickly to bring fiber into county offices and thus improve services available at county offices. Of the $13 million, in terms of the water, I'm not sure that water in Los Osos, I'd have to look at that. But I don't think there were any particular water projects. The water projects tended to be tanks and pipelines that enhanced water resiliency. But there was something close to $1 million that was directed toward the Los Osos wastewater project to enhance and improve, secure its operations. So there was money that did go to Los Osos for those purposes.
So nothing to the water basin itself to help secure the water basin to make it sustainable.
You know, I'd have to look, well, to the extent that the wastewater plant is a key part of the sustainability of the overall basin, making sure that plant works well is a piece of that. But in terms of money going for new wells or other things, I'm almost 100% sure that did not receive investment from those ARPA funds.
Sandra, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself. So I say we're going to move on the agenda. Thank you, Supervisor Gibson, for being here. I know this is an opportunity for folks to be able to connect with you and ask questions, and so appreciate your time in giving back and supporting the comments and questions.
Always my pleasure, Sandra. You all have a great evening.
Thank you. And so next we have the CSD report. Lynette, is that going to be you this evening? No, sorry. Wait, not Lynette. You do chamber.
Yeah.
Who's doing
Chuck? Chuck, you can unmute yourself if you're doing the report tonight. Chuck, are you on? Maybe he stepped away.
Okay, so let's go to Lynette with the chamber report, and then we can come back to Chuck.
Okay, the 42nd Annual Oktoberfest is going to happen, but it's going to be a little different this year. It's a drive-through draft beer and German barbecue. This event will be held on Sunday, October 31st, from 12 to 3 p.m. at the South Bay Community Center, 2180 Palisades Avenue. There will be a costume contest, and you can drive through and have your photo taken, or you can send your photo entry to Kaylee, and her number will be on the lobpchamber.org/events page. There will be first, second, and third place winners for best adult, kid, and pet costumes. And you'll need to vote by November 3rd on the Los Osos Baywood Park Chamber of Commerce Facebook page by liking your favorite costume contestants photo entry. Tickets are available at the chamber office. You'll need to call first at 805-528-4884 to make sure someone's in the office. We're a little short-staffed and sometimes they have to go out. Otherwise, Nardoni's also has tickets, and I don't have their hours. They're down in Baywood, the pizza restaurant, 715 Santa Maria, or you can call Kaylee 805-235-4868. And that's what we're able to do this year. There's an October feast plate for $20, and in Oktoberfest growler. I had to look up what a growler was for 15. So that is what is happening on Halloween for Oktoberfest. We were unable to have it last year, and we're a little truncated this year, but we're going ahead with something anyway. It's a joint venture between Kiwanis and the chamber. And if you have any questions.
Hi, Lynette, I have a question. It's James. Who's providing the beer? Who's the?
I don't know. You'd have to call Kaylee. I'm not really sure. I don't have that information.
Cool. Sounds like a cool event. Thanks.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions for Lynette or the chamber? No? And how about CSD report? Chuck, are you back?
I'm here. I did not expect to be giving a CSD report tonight.
Was there somebody else?
Apparently I will go ahead with that.
Okay, thanks.
I didn't know it was my turn. So we're moving ahead with the third of our 5 public hearings required to assess the change from a community-wide to a district by district election. I think this next meeting, we're going to have the first look at census data that actually might inform that decision. I think by the end of the year, we hope to have a decision about whether or not we're going to make that change or not. In terms of water infrastructure, we're moving ahead with wells at the Bayview Heights, the old leach fields. We've passed the environmental review and we're moving ahead with contracts. The 8th Street well, the Upper Aquifer well, that should be underway soon. We've got some major projects with the 16th Street water tanks needing some anti-corrosion repair. There's going to be some major work going on there in a year or so. So it's a matter of keeping up with infrastructure, and we're able to do that. Oh, we have a new fire truck on the way. They're apparently driving it down from the Dakotas. I think it was South Dakota, somewhere the manufacturer put it together, and they drive it down here, and then we'll do the final fitting once it gets here in the county. But Now we have a new fire truck on the way, and I'm happy to report that we actually paid cash for that $750,000 purchase. So physically, we're in good shape. It's a matter of monitoring the water situation and of trying to balance this basin.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Chuck?
Oh,
Lynette?
I did. Chuck, will these meetings be hybrid meetings or Zoom meetings or in-person meetings?
You know what? We're having a special meeting at the end of this month to talk about that. I think we're going to go on with hybrid. We may actually go back to total Zoom meetings. We did the last one sort of a hybrid. And yeah, we're going to have a special meeting in a week. And I think we're going to go back to Zoom for the time being.
Thanks, Chuck. That was a very good report too. Thank you.
And Yael, you have a question?
Chuck, what is the advantage or what's the pros for having it district by district and not the whole area? I mean, we're not.
Well, that's what we're gonna try and find out. In some communities, there are certain concentrations of residents that don't get represented. You have maybe a minority population or just a special interest population in a certain area, and if you're running on a community-wide basis, maybe people with funding to run campaigns are the only ones that people in the general community hear from. And you might not have a whole neighborhood represented. And so we need to look at that. It's an issue that's been around for quite a while. Most municipalities, the bigger cities and you know, that's just the way that things operate. So it's kind of unusual anymore to have a whole community-wide election system, and we're going to be looking at that. I think this will be our first peek at census data that might inform that decision.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
And I see Tom. You have your hand
Tom, you
raised.
can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That redistricting project, if it does indeed go into effect, will it be in effect by the time the next election comes around?
I think that's the decision we're going to be facing. Yes, is whether or not we put that into play for the 2022 election.
And any other questions for Chuck? No. Okay, thanks for the update, Chuck.
Thank you, Locac, for the work that you
Spontaneously.
do.
And so next we'll go to public comment for items not on the agenda. And this is an opportunity for anybody that wants to speak to an item not on the agenda. We do limit it to 3 minutes per item, and there is no discussion on the item. So if you would like to make comment, please just raise your hand and James will call on you and I'll set the timer.
Thanks. That's Jeff with his hand up first. Jeff, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Edwards.
Hold on, Jeff. You want me to show pictures, right?
Sure. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jeff had sent some pictures earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and try to share these while he's speaking. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Thank you again. My name is Jeff Edwards, and this evening I wanted to speak to what I'm calling the Clutter Contagion happening in Los Osos and Baywood Park. I'm referring to the proliferation of shipping containers placed in front yards of residential properties and in the fronting street right-of-way. Some of these are remaining permanently. We've got RVs, boats, trailers, campers, buses, again in the front setback and in the right-of-way. Some of these vehicles are occupied. There's unpermitted businesses, including flea markets, auto repair, firewood processing and sales, and other pop-up commercial operations in residential areas. Commercial vehicles, including chippers, tractors, potato chips, and the like, potato chip trucks. 6-foot fencing along front setbacks, solid and chain link that are greater than the required 3-foot maximum. Here we have a for sale trailer. Residential neighbors see this going on and say to themselves, this must be allowed, so I'm going to do the same, hence the contagion. Much of this could be addressed by educating homeowners and tenants about what's allowed and what isn't. I'm looking forward to the planned presentation by Daniel Del Rio of County Code Enforcement, who was or is scheduled to speak to Locac. Why is this important? If it's not obvious, visual blight, quality of life, and property values are at stake. My suggestion is let's show a little community pride. Likewise, I'm asking Locac to show leadership in this regard. How about an anti-clutter committee to consider these matters? What's going on is outrageous and needs to be addressed immediately, in my view. Some Locac and public members are dead set against any new single-family homes on the basis of water demand. What about all of the illegally occupied RVs, mobiles, and Airstreams? They use water without any mitigation. So how do you reconcile this? That's all I have for now, and I am available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And next.
Yeah, Patrick, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, Patrick McGibney with the Los Osos Sustainability Group, advocating for the sustainability of our water basin. It is in peril. You are an advisory group with a role of advising the county of the needs of this community. Our need is to have a water supply we can depend on for the present population and, God willing, for any added population. This community needs you to take a stand in defense of our water basin. We need you to help all of us protect and preserve our only water supply. The BMC, which includes the county, has two main documents that instructs them on how to manage our water supply: the agreed upon basin management plan and the court-ordered stipulated judgment, which resulted from the adjudication of the basin. The county also has the conditions of approval issued when the Coastal Commission approved the construction of the Los Osos wastewater project, which are outlined in the CDP. The county must adhere and implement these conditions. As an advocacy group, we have read all of these documents and many more. We have an attorney as well as a hydrologist who are very familiar with all of these. We've been issuing recommendations to the BMC, the county, the water board, and the Coastal Commission for years, based upon our readings of these documents and our impartial observations. We have nothing to gain here or anything to prove in our deliberations or recommendations, but a sustainable water basin. As a community, we are up against many challenges, not the least of which is the mega drought in which we find ourselves. The water purveyors are concerned about the sustainability of our basin, yet the county has been willy-nilly approving new buildings over our basin, including new ADUs, pot farms, and new residential homes. These are not prioritized upon who's been waiting the longest, but on the faulty and obsolete Title 19 program, which the county continues to use even as it awaits major revisions. You may ask, if we don't have a dependable water supply from the basin, why does the county still allow new building? This is an answer you'll have to get from our supervisor. It is the reason, though, that the sustainability group will appeal any new developments that we are aware of that could increase the water demand of our basin. When the time comes when you can advise the county to stop issuing building permits until our basin can be shown to be by conclusive evidence that it is sustainable, we hope you, for the sake of the community, you take that initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any other members of the public?
Lindy has her hand up. Let me see. All right, Lindy, you can unmute yourself.
Hi again. I'm sort of in the same ballpark as Patrick. I'm kind of frustrated in the county's unwillingness to share what they call the ministerial permits that are issued. And basically that means that the county has looked them over and sees no problem and sees nothing that should come to Locac for any kind of further discussion. So the difficulty of even finding that list each month, as well as the fact that all of the tree cutting and tree permits for removal of trees are also included in there, along with all the business permits. It's a long list of a variety of permits. And I think if the county wants to be straightforward with what they are allowing, we need to have those lists supplied to our land use committee each month. It's just, we've watched a couple of developments go forward that nobody had any clue about. And that isn't being very open with this community, especially our concerns about water. And then the concerns about the trees. The amount of trees being cut down is, I mean, a lot of them are dying, and the stress on them right now with climate change and the drought is difficult. But the fact that we don't have any input as a community, especially a community that really cares about their trees, it's unnerving. And I hope that when we do see Daniel Del Rio and get a update on, get educated about where the county stands on code enforcement, we can also discuss about making ministerial permits available to the community each month. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. Right, I don't see any other hands. Do you, James?
I don't.
Okay, so let's move on to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. Somebody like to make a motion?
Oh, this is Lynette. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the August meeting.
I'll second.
This is Jen Harbour. I'll second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved. We will move on to our Locac committee reports and updates, and this will work the same way as it has throughout the meeting. So the chair of the committee will give an update. We'll open it up to questions from the council, questions from the public, and then make any motions as necessary. So Deborah is not here tonight for the treasurer's report, but Sue has an update for us.
Thanks. I have a letter that was written by Deborah that she asked me to read. And we still have not received an answer from the IRS regarding our status. We need this to access our account at Mechanic Space. For that reason, the report is the same as last month. We have $1,742.95 in our account at Mechanics Bank. We have received a check from the county for $14.61. I'm waiting to deposit this until we have the issues with our account resolved. If necessary, I will open a new account at some other bank with this check. However, there will be other requirements in order to open a new account. Chase will require a fictitious name filing with the county, which will cost a little money as well as a public filing notice. The IRS said it could take up to 60 days to get our confirmation letter, so we'll wait another month before taking a different approach. And then that was signed, Deborah.
What a pain.
Yeah.
Well, when this, Bruce or Blake, do I remember correctly from last month? Did you have any insight on how other community advisory councils have done it? Or am I making that up? Is that something we were supposed to do? Maybe not.
Probably have to, Bruce is still here. You want to unmute him, see if he wants to.
He might be taking a break. Anyways, I guess that's something we could ask other councils, how they've handled that.
Deborah has done a lot of work on that, and I don't know, and I think Trish too, so I'm not sure what they've come up with.
Why is our situation different from before? Our previous treasurer didn't have this issue? I mean, is that new?
Well, she's a signer on the account, so she could access everything where none of us are signers on the account. Am I understanding it correctly? So they don't want to allow us to do anything.
Nothing's been updated for years, and we went in to access the account when Deborah was elected treasurer, and they won't release any money to her because she's not a signer on the account, and we cannot get anyone who has been a signer on the account to sign for that money. So we are trying to access it.
Did we ever get money for this year's budget? Was that already?
We received the county from the check for $1,461.
But it hasn't been
not
deposited. Okay, good. Let's hang on to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to land use. Larry.
From at land use, several months ago, we presented a letter to Locac, and it was tentatively approved, but we were waiting for some updates from the Basin Management Committee and a letter from the joint purveyors. Both those things have happened, and so I'm resubmitting the letter. It's just a letter of concern from Locac, stating our concerns about our water supply. And so I'd like to bring it to the table now and open it up for discussion. And then if everyone likes the letter and stuff, that we go ahead and approve it. It's just a statement saying, that the Basin Management Committee report and the local purveyors all have concerns about our water, and so does Locac and the community as a whole. So I'll leave that up to the board members, what they want to do with it.
Do any council members have any questions? Comments? Sue?
Yeah, I just like to say, I think this letter is a long time coming. I think we need to make a stand. We are here to support our community, not agree what the county needs to be doing or not doing. And I think we need to make a stand and tell the county they've got to stop giving away our water. At this point in time, there's a huge drought, and we can't have, there's really not much evidence to say our basin is doing anything but maintaining or deteriorating, and with no rain in sight, we are in jeopardy. One of the purveyors has said that they won't have enough water to serve their constituents within the next 10 years. So I think that we need to make a stand, and we need to tell the committee. So I'm in 100% support of this letter. Thank you.
Any, do we have anybody from the public? Lindy?
You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Oh, I think I did. I think it's a great letter, and I do think that the more voices the county hears from, and we are the advisory council representing most of the community. So I support, looking at the drought situation and the continuation, I don't think this is a good time to not stand up for defense of what water basin we still have left and need to protect. So I think it's a good letter. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff has his hand raised.
Yeah. Jeff, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Again, Jeff Edwards. I don't believe I've seen the final version of, apparently there's 2 letters. I'm unclear on that. Moreover, I think you know that any new development is required to retrofit. at a 2-to-1 ratio, which virtually guarantees that any new development will be water neutral. So I'm struggling to understand how there are concerns about water neutral development, frankly. And as we know, the Title 19 ordinance is being amended right now and brought up to current standards and refined. So it would seem to me premature to talk about any letters, excuse me, any letters addressing that situation. Also, I'm not aware of either the major purveyors, that is the LOCSD or Golden State, making representations that they're going to be out of water in 10 years or anytime. So I think, you know, it's a fairly complex issue, but we can't conflate these concerns with the realities that we have by way of retrofitting. So I think it's misplaced to send in generalized letters that really carry no weight. All the projects that come before you need to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis, and that's the bottom line. So I object to not having the letters in front of me. You know, are they buried on your website, perhaps? But do you really know what you're talking about or approving?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra, you're muted. We can't.
Shoot, sorry. The letter is on the, Lynette posted the letter on the website. It's under the agenda as part of what we were discussed.
Yeah.
Okay, and go ahead, James.
Going to respond to say that, you know, in essence, the Locac's letter is a letter of support for the letter that the 3 purveyors combined to send to the county. So really, it's saying that we support the efforts put forth by the water purveyors.
Why send it? What's the point? I'm muted, I'm pretty sure.
No, you're not.
You're not. You should be muted, though.
You should be muted. So as an advisory board, we advise, and we have a choice now to support, make our statement supporting the letter of the purveyors or not, and that's what we're discussing. I see a couple other hands, Patrick and Eve, and we're going to limit it to 2 minutes per speaker at this point because it is 8:30 at night. We want to get through the rest of the agenda.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. Well, I obviously disagree with Mr. Edwards there. The Title 19 that's being used right now, they're using the old methods, which we have already shown do not work and actually use more water. And to answer his question, which I think you already did, you're an advisory board. That's your position. You're to advise the county on what is best for the community. All the purveyors, including CSD and Golden State, all are concerned about our water supply right now, and they don't feel at this point our basin is sustainable. And you can read that in any of their reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Eve?
Go ahead, Eve.
Basically, I just want to say what Patrick just said. I thought his comments were really excellent. And that I also want to urge anybody who hasn't had a chance to read the purveyor's letter. I think that Jeff is incorrect in his interpretation. I think it's explicit about the concerns and the lack of sustainability of the water at the moment based on the 2020 annual report and the other examples that the purveyors, I think it was a big deal for the purveyors to write that letter to the county related to the ADUs. And I hope that everybody has a chance to really read it carefully. It took me a couple of readings to get through it, but it's a lot of cause for concern if we live in Los Osos and we expect to spend the rest of our days here and have our children live here and our grandchildren and that kind of thing. So I think it's important to have that on the table.
Thank you. And Lisa.
You can unmute yourself, Lisa.
Yeah, well said, Eve and Patrick, and I'm just supporting what they just said. And I wanted to say, I think that these kind of letters should go further and go to the California Coastal Commission at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we'll bring it back to the council. Larry, how do you want to move forward?
I'd like to make a motion that Locac vote on supporting this letter, which supports the purveyor's letter.
This is Jan Harper. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so 0 opposed. Okay, great. Thanks. So we will get that letter out. Okay, next.
This is Jan Harper. I'd just like to say, yes, I think a CC should go to the Coastal Commission.
Absolutely. I think the plan was that we send it to as many people as we need to, Jan, many as possible. County, Board of Supervisors, Coastal Commission. I think that was the plan all along.
Thank you.
And Jan, you're up next, traffic and circulation.
Okay, we haven't been meeting. There's not been anything critical coming from the county. So as usual, if you have a street issue, you need to call the county at 805-781-5252. If there's an issue with speed, that's the CHP. And if there's an issue with parking or some of the items with that Jeff mentioned and showed with his pictures, you call the sheriff.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trees and landscape, Yael.
Hi. So I was asked to ask for approval of a letter. So, and as I indicated previously, we did not ask for approval of the letter, and there are several reasons for that. But the main reason is that this was one of many letters that have been sending out to try to figure out how to proceed with the project. So there is no project because we are still trying to figure it out. So just to give you an idea, we've been working for over a year on a project that attempts to revitalize the landscape of the El Morro pathway, bike and a pedestrian pathway. And we've been getting a lot of hurdles. We've been dealing with a lot of hurdles. But then came the fire season, and we've been doing several walkings through the trail and realized, and also being in touch with local neighbors. One of them have been on our committee team. And we realized that it's actually becoming a fire risk, the trail, due to a large amount of veil grass, mostly veil grass. Some other grass too, I think, but mostly veil grass. So we've been, people have been contacted, the neighbors have been contacted by the fire department, just like they've been doing in other areas. One of them mentioned earlier, to weed abate, because that's what they've been doing. That's what they do. They let people know that they need to do that. In the previous 5 years, the Park and Rec department, a county department, have been doing it, and nobody asked them, and they've been weed abating, and that's been their routine. When we were trying to get the permits to an entry, a right of entry into the trail area to work, to start planning the project of revitalization, rehabilitation, we, as I mentioned, had a lot of hurdles, and so we were kind of so here comes the risk. Now the fire risk and they Park and Rec are not doing their weed abatement that they've been doing every year. So we tried to figure it out and started contacting them. And to make a long story a bit shorter, and I have some other members here of the committee, and they can jump in anytime, please. We realized that it's not going to happen this year. And one of the reasons is because of the HCP. The HCP is coming closer to be approved by the end of the year, or maybe beginning of next year. The Habitat Preservation Plan of Los Osos. And so that somehow complicates matters. And we were notified that no matter what pathway we are going to take through to mitigate the presence basically of the Moro shoulder band snail, we will not be able to do it soon enough to weed abate during this fire season, and that it will cost a lot of money, because basically we would have to hire the do the HCP, hire snail monitors, and so on and so forth. It wouldn't be just like we are getting the permit and we're having a work party with volunteers. So basically the letter that you received, that we were going to, you supposedly had to approve, which we never asked, went to Supervisor Gibson through Blake, because we just didn't know what else to do, and we thought maybe he can help us. And they tried. Blake actually tried, and got into the same dead end that we have. So
at this point, the project is, the proposal isn't even on the table anymore.
Fire, not for this year. It's not going to happen this year. We're hoping. And please, I'd like maybe at this point, maybe to ask Cindy and maybe Lisa too, to jump in just to make things a little clearer if I just complicated matter more than explained. So maybe you can, if Cindy's
Lisa, I don't see Cindy. Oh.
Lisa, you can unmute yourself if you want to weigh in.
Oh, okay. I'll try to add a little. Yeah, what you guys were referring to as a letter really was a mini proposal, and it was to create a bit of fire safety for the immediate residential dwellings along the edge of the pathway, both north and south side. And it was a really small project that just involved weed whacking belt grass. And I just want to say thank you to Bruce Gibson and Blake, because they took on being the point of contact, and Gibson met us over there. And it was wonderful to have him offer that to us, though, like Yael said, it went nowhere. But I do want to say that little project was a fraction of the fire fuel that is on the El Moro pathway. And that's really a point I just want in the record. You know, there's a large old growth eucalypt that's never been arbored, with piles of debris down below. There's old dead myoporums. I could go on. There's a lot of fuel. So the deferred maintenance problem by parks in our community is so lacking that I just want to make the point. I mean, that is something we were trying to rectify, and we would like to really help as a whole group of community members. But it is cost prohibitive to go through the hoops with a biological monitor and all of that. Now we'll probably try again once the new HCP is in place. But once again, it's really costly. And that would be for doing a project once. And then if you wanted to go back the next year and do something again, maybe there's die out and you want to do replanting, we'd have to raise many thousands of dollars for the biological monitor again. So it's a big lesson for us that those kind of projects are asking financially too much from the community, and agencies need to step in. And that's my main point. Thank you.
And just to wrap it up, I mean, especially that project was originally a project of the county park and recs, which they have not figured in the maintenance. And that's why 10 years later, we're here trying to revitalize it. But it should have been factored in, and financially, mostly, of course, so that we don't find ourselves 10 years later trying to do it ourselves. We will be more than happy to provide volunteers to do the work, but we can't really afford to pay for that.
Okay, well, I'm sure you guys will keep working on it and keep updating us, and hopefully, you know, Bruce and Blake will keep advocating that it needs to be done along with the homeowners with the fire safety. And since we don't need to make any decision on the letter since it's kind of dead, but I think just a process for us in the future, like land use comes to us that we want to approve any letters that go forward, or traffic and circulation. And this is something we'll revisit as a business item later in our bylaws, that anything that moves out into agencies should be brought to the council at some point or through email for review and comment, just so we're all in the know. Because I think we all support this work and we want to advocate for it to happen as a council and as more voices advocating for it. So thanks for all your work on that committee, Tree and Landscape Committee. Outreach, no updates. Keep sending me stuff if you want me to post it on the newsletter. Ad hoc water committee. James, was there any updates?
Yeah, we have a few updates. There was no Basin Management Committee meeting since our last Locac meeting. They had one scheduled and they canceled it. Though they sent an email around today rescheduling that BMC meeting for the 29th of this month. The Los Osos Sustainability Group has sent a letter to the Central Coast District of the Coastal Commission regarding their concerns over the sustainability of the basin. They also sent an appeal to the Coastal Commission about an ADU that has been approved on Tapadero Ave. The countywide water action team issued their regional water infrastructure resiliency plan summary. Los Osos was listed as 5th in the county for highest priority or highest risk based on the fact that we have a single source of water. The Los Osos Community Services District has approved a motion to direct the general manager to initiate investigation into alternative water supply resiliency projects to address the current and future water demands of the district. They authorized the use of $10,000 to engage the district engineer to support investigation of outside sources of water, essentially. So this is pretty interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what this investigation turns up. And good to see that there are some backup sources of water being evaluated, at least by the CSD. And then lastly, Sea Pines Golf Course had connected to the wastewater treatment system without paying an assessment fee for that connection. The county has recently levied an assessment against Sea Pines and has required Sea Pines to pay $238,000 to connect to the treatment facility. So they are going to pay in payment plans of $11,000 per year to pay off that $238,000 bill. And that's all that the Water Committee has.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for James? All right, thanks committees and chairs for all the work. And regular agenda items, we don't have any, no business items. Unless there's any final last words, we can adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Bye.
Second.
Thanks for hosting,
Thank you,
Sandra.
Sandra.
Thanks, guys.
See you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.